The airport buzzed with the usual early morning chaos. Families dragging overstuffed suitcases, professionals briskly walking while glued to their phones, and children running too far ahead of tired parents. But among the crowd, one figure stood apart, not just for his posture or the crisp lines of his military uniform, but for the gravity he carried with him. Colonel Marcus Ellison's polished black shoes clicked against the floor as he entered, each step measured, deliberate. He had walked through countless terminals over the years, but today felt different. The medals on his chest weren't what weighed him down. It was the presence of a fallen soldier's casket waiting outside on the tarmac, draped in the American flag. Private First Class Jordan Wells, 21 years old, gone far too soon. Ellison adjusted the brim of his hat, inhaled deeply, and made his way to the airline counter. The sense of duty coursing through him was absolute. He was not here as a passenger. He was here as a representative of honor and sacrifice, tasked with bringing one of their own home. As he stepped to the counter and presented his military ID and escort papers, the airline agent behind the desk glanced up briefly before typing into her system. She frowned. "Sir, may I see that again?" she asked, her voice tight. Ellison handed her the papers again, his expression calm but observant. He noticed the flicker of confusion in her eyes, the subtle exchange of glances between her and a nearby colleague. She leaned in and whispered something, prompting the other employee to approach. When she turned back to him, her forced smile was more unsettling than polite. "I'm sorry, Colonel," she said, "but there appears to be an issue with your booking. Unfortunately, we can't allow you to board this flight." Ellison didn't flinch. His voice was composed, steady. "I'm on official duty escorting a fallen soldier. My documentation is complete and in order." "Yes, sir," she responded, still not meeting his gaze. "But there's a security protocol that prevents us from processing your ticket at this time." Ellison's jaw clenched beneath the surface, but his expression remained controlled. "Security protocol? I've flown numerous missions as a military escort. There's no such policy that would stop me from boarding." Behind him, the line of passengers began to quiet. Some tilted their heads to listen, others stared openly. A soldier being denied boarding with a flag-draped casket on the tarmac wasn't something one saw every day. The agent looked around for support, clearly uncomfortable. A supervisor emerged from the back, a man in his mid-50s with graying hair and a polished badge clipped to his chest. He folded his arms as he approached. "Colonel Ellison," he began, "I apologize for the inconvenience. Unfortunately, due to certain operational protocols, we can't allow you to board this flight." Ellison raised an eyebrow. "What operational protocols? Be specific." "It's just a security measure. Nothing personal, sir." Ellison had heard that phrase before. In war rooms, in diplomatic disputes, in moments of quiet systemic bias. "Nothing personal" was the prelude to every personal slight. He leaned in slightly. "Let me ask again, respectfully. What is the real reason I'm being denied?" The supervisor didn't answer. His posture remained, but the air had shifted. Passengers were no longer just passengers. They were now spectators. A few pulled out their phones. From a few feet behind, a grizzled man in a USMC hat stepped forward. "You got a problem with his clearance?" he asked. "No, sir. It's not about clearance," the supervisor replied. The man scoffed. "Then what the hell is it? I've been through more airport security lines than I care to count, and I've never seen protocol block a soldier from bringing one of our own home." More murmurs. More phones recording. A young woman stepped forward, phone raised. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "but are you really not letting him board?" Her question hung heavy in the air. Ellison responded, "That's correct." Her eyes widened. "I'm streaming this. People need to know." That single sentence broke the floodgates. Another man held up his phone, stating plainly, "This is wrong." A woman further back shouted, "Can someone please explain what's going on?" The agent behind the counter began to panic. Her hands trembled slightly over her keyboard. The supervisor stiffened, but Ellison didn't move. He stood in silence, watching the momentum shift. The Marine from earlier stepped forward again. "This is a disgrace," he said. "An absolute disgrace." Then, from somewhere in the crowd, "It's already trending." The shift from quiet protest to viral outrage was immediate. Phones lit up. Posts were being made in real time. Tweets, live videos, hashtags. The overhead speakers crackled. "Due to unforeseen circumstances, Flight 320 to Denver has been delayed." Nobody cared. All attention was on the man in uniform that a tweet from a veterans group popped up on someone's phone. "We are aware of the disgraceful incident at Capital Regional Airport. Our heroes deserve better." The airline's control of the narrative was gone. The agent behind the counter bolted to the back room. The supervisor lingered, pale and rattled. Then came the next escalation. A tall man in a tailored suit walked briskly to the counter, airline badge clipped neatly to his lapel. He spoke with practiced calm. "Colonel, I deeply apologize. There appears to have been a miscommunication. We're working to get you on board immediately." Ellison didn't speak at first. He let the weight of the silence linger. "Miscommunication," he said finally. "That's what we're calling it now." "Yes, sir," the man said. "A regrettable system error. We assure you it wasn't intentional." Ellison glanced back at the woman who had initially denied him. She looked away. "I have one question," he said. "If no one had pulled out a phone, would I still be standing here?" The man hesitated. "Sir, You don't need to answer," Ellison said. "We both know." A murmur ran through the crowd. "We'd like to offer you a first-class seat, sir," the representative said, "and personally escort you to your gate." Ellison didn't blink. "I don't need first class. I need respect. And so does the soldier I'm escorting." More murmurs. More nods. Just then, a young man in airport security uniform approached, phone in hand. "Sir," he said to the airline rep, "you need to see this." The rep's face drained of color as he looked at the screen. News outlets had already picked up the story. One headline stood out. U.S. Army colonel denied boarding while escorting fallen soldier. Outrage erupts nationwide. The rep handed the phone back, visibly shaken. "We deeply regret this situation. We're drafting a public statement." Ellison cut him off. "The public already knows." Suddenly, the energy in the terminal shifted again. Another man entered the scene, not from the airline or airport staff. His bearing was unmistakable, military. His Navy suit was tailored, and a Department of the Army badge glinted on his lapel. "Colonel Ellison," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Major Anthony Prescott, Department of the Army. We've been informed. You're no longer flying commercial." The airline rep stammered. "We were just about to." "You were about to cover your tracks," Prescott said sharply. "Colonel Ellison and Private Wells' remains will be escorted on a private military flight. Transport is waiting." Gasps from the crowd. A woman whispered, "The Pentagon's involved." Ellison nodded. "Understood, Major." Prescott turned back to the rep. "This will be addressed." It wasn't a threat. It was a sentence. Ellison turned to the Marine who had stood up for him. "Thank you, brother." "We look out for our own," the man replied. And then, without another word, Colonel Marcus Ellison walked away from the counter, not toward the gate, but toward the mission, toward honor. But for the airline, the damage had only begun. What they assumed would be a one-hour incident turned into a national scandal. News networks ran the footage on repeat. Military support organizations issued public condemnations. Senators called for formal hearings. Hashtags demanding a boycott of the airline gained traction. Within a week, the airline stock price dropped significantly that a formal complaint was filed by a coalition of military groups, citing discrimination and violation of service member rights. Under growing pressure, the airline CEO issued a televised apology, calling it a regrettable misunderstanding. The staff involved were placed on administrative leave that it wasn't enough. Meanwhile, Ellison continued his solemn duty. He stood by as Private Jordan Wells was returned to his family. He didn't speak to cameras. He didn't ask for the spotlight, because this was never about him. This was about respect. A respect that shouldn't require outrage to be granted. A respect that should come without cameras, without hashtags, without trending tweets. And thanks to those who stood up in that terminal, the Marine, the young woman with the live stream, the passengers who refused to look away, a message was sent. When people speak up, injustice has nowhere to hide, and sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truths.